So in this module, we're talking about communicating mission and vision and clarifying those things. And in this video, I want to talk to you about clarifying and communicating goals. And so mission, vision, and goals, they kind of all work together. They all work together to lead your church forward into a direction. And the reason this is so important is because without clear goals for your church, without clear goals, you don't have really anything driving you forward. And I see the mistake that a lot of churches make is they try to grow their church by passion. So you're just passionate about reaching people, you're just passionate about preaching or evangelism, passionate about the church. But passion alone is not enough. You can't just lead a church based on passion alone. You've got to have some strategy to that. And so I see a lot of pastors kind of make the passion mistake of just thinking that passion alone, preaching, passionate preaching enough is enough to grow the church. And while that is very important, you need to cast a big vision. You need to have a big wow. You've also got to come along and implement some how. So, a bunch of passion and a lot of vision without really any actionable steps to go along with it is actually demotivating to people because they hear all what's possible and they never see it. So the things that kind of brings vision and turns it into reality, more often than not, is goals. Now, goal setting, here's the thing about goal setting. Goal setting is so simple. I mean, you've got to have goals. I know I've got to have goals. We all know we should have goals. Goal setting is incredibly simple to understand, but it is incredibly difficult to do. Most churches don't have written, articulated goals that people can rally around, but you are not most churches. You are not most pastors. And you are doing the hard work right now of going, what do we need to do in order for our church to reach more people? I read this quote from Reggie McNeil, who wrote a great book called The Present Future, and I highly recommend you read it. He said this: I'm convinced that the reason for so much burnout, lack of commitment, and low performance in our churches among staff and members is directly related to the failure to declare the results that we're after. We don't know when we are winning. Here's what he's saying. He's saying, listen, staff, pastors, people in the church, they all get burned out when there's activity, when there's motion, when there's hard work, but there's no results, and they don't see the results. When there's a bunch of activity without results. And he says if we don't know when we're winning, we're going to be demotivated. Planning a church, this is not upward soccer where everybody can run around, kick a ball around, everybody gets a trophy. It doesn't work like that in the real world. You've got to communicate, here's what we're trying to do, and we've got to shoot for it. And when we hit it, we feel great. When we miss it, we know we've got work to do. And so in your church, I want to encourage you to clearly set goals. Now, it's not enough, and it's not where you should start to set ministry goals. So you don't want to have a goal for your student ministry, kids ministry, worship service, all the different components of your church. Attendance goals, VBS goals, giving goals. You have all these unrelated goals. That doesn't work. What I want to challenge you to do, particularly as you're looking towards breaking 200 and as we're talking about goals, is to create and communicate church-wide goals. Not ministry-specific goals, but church-wide goals for your church, perhaps in the big categories. To come up with a 2 or 3, it can't be more than 2 or 3 goals, 1 to 3 church-wide goals that your entire church can rally behind. The reason this is so important is because your goals should drive your decision. So I want to use a very simple one. This is a goal that a lot of churches would have. Let's say you make a goal to break 200. And you say, hey, this year we're going to break 200. In order to do that, hey, we should go through a course. The Church Fuel course is going to help us. Hey, we should read some books. Hey, we need to implement some of the stuff that these people are talking about. Our church-wide goal is to break 200. If that is indeed your goal, that goal should be pushed out to every ministry. And as you're making decisions as to whether or not to do certain things, the fact that you have a goal of breaking 200, it ought to influence your decision-making. You go, hey, should we do this event? Is it going to help us break 200? No, not really. Then no, we shouldn't do it. Now, that's an extreme example, and I'm not suggesting that be your goal. You've got to come up with a goal that fits your culture, your context, your leadership, but your goal needs to be clear. It needs to be a goal where you can communicate it and have everybody rally around it. See what happens, I've seen this happen in so many churches, is you go to a conference and you hear a good idea, right? Here's a church that's doing this, or a church that's doing that, or this church is using this family ministry strategy. And you go to this conference and you get all fired up about this family ministry strategy. And you come back and you try to implement it in your church. You're like, hey, it's working for all these churches. It's really quality stuff. Hey, watch this video. You talk to the sales guy. Hey, this will be great for our church. And you try to implement it. The reason it doesn't work is because you implemented a really good idea apart from an overall strategy. And this is going to sound counterproductive, but good ideas can actually keep your church from growing. Because when you implement a bunch of random ideas, hodgepodge all together like a Mr. Potato Head, it doesn't work right. What works better is fewer ideas, but focused in on the right strategy. And setting the right ministry goals will help you build the strategy. And so what I want to encourage you to do in this video is to get your leadership team together, get some people that you trust together, and ask this question. This is not a 30-minute meeting and you're done. This is, you need to have a meeting, follow up. But the question that you've got to solve is, what are the 1 to 3 goals for our church for this year? I mean, what do we want to see God do in our church? Listen, you can come up with a list of 10 to 15 objectives and halfway accomplish half of them. But it'd be so much better if you could come up with 1 to 3 broad ministry goals where you say, you know what, when we get to 12 months from now, if we've accomplished these 1, 2, or 3 things, we're going to feel great. We're going to feel like we won. We're going to be able to go to the church and say, we said we were going to do this. Check it off. What's next? Rather than try to implement 10 things halfway all at one time, focus on 1 or 2, no more than 3 ministry objectives and goals. And if you write them down and build around it, you're going to lead your church forward. Now, your goal could be attendance, your goal could be giving, your goal could be volunteers, your goal could be members. Whatever you make your goal, though, you've got to focus on it. You've got to focus on your goal, which means you're going to leave some other things aside. Not that they're unimportant, they're just not now. And if that's one of the biggest lessons that I hope you get out of this course, is that there's a lot of things that you could do. When you choose to focus on something, you're not saying the other things are unimportant. You're just saying they're not what's next for us. They're not what's now for us. This is what we're doing now. Those are good things, but they're not for now. Those are for later. We've got to do this now. And so when you've got your 1 to 3 ministry goals, here's where this provides incredible clarity. Because you know all those staff meetings that you have? Guess what they're about? How do we accomplish your goals? You know your staff retreat that you have? Guess what it's about? It's about how do we accomplish our goals. You know those ministry evaluation meetings and those planning meetings? What's the agenda of them? It's how are we going to accomplish our goals through this ministry or through this program. So when you've got clarity around goals, it actually helps influence in a big way what your staff meeting should be about, what your leadership retreat should be about, what your leadership development plan, what should be on it, what your retreat should look like, what you talk about with your leadership team. When you have clear and compelling goals, it allows you to move your church forward in a way that makes sense. So you're not grabbing and pulling from all the different places that you go to, but you're accomplishing what it is that you set out to accomplish. So here's your homework. Your homework for this video is to pull some people together, to get your leadership team together, to get some people that you trust together and answer the question, what are our big ministry goals for the upcoming year? When you can answer that question, when you can tell all your staff, when you can clarify that, be the chief clarity officer around the goals for your church, incredible amount of clarity will come to all your planning, your programs, your organizing, your meetings, and your events. So what are your ministry goals? 1, 2, or 3 ministry goals. Write them down, talk about them, pray about them, think through them, strategize around them, and let them push your church forward to 200 and beyond.